Doc Terror and his cyborg companion hacker unleash their forces to conquer Earth. Only one force can stop this evil. Brave men. They can be transported anywhere. Becoming man and machine. Power Xtreme. Whatever the challenge, they are ready. The Centurions.
Listen up, because I'm about to tell you about one of the most ambitious toy lines of the 1980s that had everything going for it. Legendary comic book artists, cutting-edge animation, and toys so advanced they were basically engineering marvels. And yet, it completely crashed and burned. I'm talking about the Centurions, Power Xtreme. Now, if you grew up in the mid-80s, you might remember seeing this show. Maybe you even had one of those massive 10-inch action figures. But here's what you probably don't know. Jack Kirby, yeah, the guy who co-created the Marvel Universe, designed these characters. The animation was done by the same Japanese studio that made your favorite mecha anime. And the toys? They were so complex and expensive that they basically killed themselves. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the entire story of the Centurions, from its incredible creative origins to its catastrophic commercial failure. And stick around, because at the end, I'm going to reveal why you'll probably never see this franchise come back, even in today's nostalgia-obsessed market. There's actually a pretty dark reason for that. But first, let me paint you a picture of just how good this show could have been. The origins, the creative dream team, and brilliant concept. So let's go back to 1985. Reagan's in office, the toy industry is completely deregulated, and every animation studio is trying to create the next Transformers, or G.I. Joe. Ruby Spears Enterprises, you know, the guys who made Thundar the Barbarian, they wanted to do something different. They didn't just want another toy commercial disguised as a cartoon. They wanted to make something with substance. And here's where it gets crazy. They brought in Jack Kirby and Gil Kane. Now, if those names don't mean anything to you, let me put it this way. Jack Kirby co-created the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the Hulk, basically half of Marvel Comics. Gil Kane drew Green Lantern and Spider-Man. These weren't just random artists. These were legends. And Ruby Spears basically gave them free rein to design whatever they wanted. According to people who worked there, Kirby would come in with these thick stacks of what they called crescent boards, just covered in mechanical designs and character concepts. And some of his staff described these designs as, and I quote, psychotic off-the-wall aberrations. The guy was just going nuts with high-tech cosmic machinery. You can see his influence all over the power suits, that heavy plating, the aggressive posture, the intricate circuitry. It's pure Kirby God-style design, like something Galactus would wear. Meanwhile, Gil Kane was making sure the characters still looked human and heroic underneath all that metal. So you had this perfect combination of Kirby's mechanical madness and Kane's heroic anatomy. But it wasn't just the art that was top tier. The writing room, stacked with science fiction authors. We're talking Michael Reeves, who later wrote for Batman, the animated series, and Gargoyles. Larry DiTillio from He-Man and Beast Wars. Jerry Conway, who co-created The Punisher. Mark Scott Zicree, a prolific sci-fi writer. These guys brought a level of sophistication to the scripts that most Saturday morning cartoons just didn't have. And get this, the animation was outsourced to Nippon Sunrise in Japan, specifically Studio 7. These were the guys doing mecha anime. So the Centurions had this fluid, detailed mechanical animation that was just leagues ahead of most American cartoons at the time. On paper, this show was unstoppable. Alright, so what was the actual show about? The tagline was Man and Machine, Power Xtreme. And that wasn't just marketing, it was the whole concept. You had three main heroes, each specializing in a different combat environment. First, you've got Max Ray, the calm, mustache-wearing leader who handles sea operations. He's got this green exo-frame, and all his weapon systems are designed for underwater combat. Systems like Cruiser for surface operations, Tidal Blast for subsurface missions, and Depth Charger for deep-sea combat. Then there's Jake Rockwell, the rugged, short-tempered land operations guy in yellow. He's basically the muscle of the team with heavy artillery, Fire Force for land assault, Wild Weasel for terrain protection, and Detonator for heavy artillery. And finally, Ace McCloud, the cocky, Top Gun-style pilot in blue who handles air and space combat. He's got Sky Knight for air combat, Orbital Interceptor for space missions, and Skybolt for reinforcement. Now here's what made the show unique. These guys didn't just have static equipment like G.I. Joe. They had modular assault weapon systems. These were sophisticated exoskeletons that could be beamed down from an orbital space station called Sky Vault, operated by Crystal Kane. And the Centurions could mentally command these systems to lock onto their exo-frames. The villains were great too. You had Doc Terror, this cyborg scientist who loved being half machine. He wasn't trying to become human again. He thought being a cyborg was an evolutionary upgrade. His whole plan was to turn all humans into robotic slaves. And his sidekick Hacker was this lunk-headed criminal merged with a supercomputer called Legion. Together, they commanded armies of Doom drones, expendable robots that the Centurions could blow up without any ethical concerns about killing people. And here's something that was actually ahead of its time. The show had a major environmental focus. A lot of Doc Terror's plots involved ecological extortion, threatening the world's oceans, weather patterns, or rainforests. This was 1986, remember. Environmental themes weren't exactly mainstream in kids' cartoons yet, but the Centurions was out there, making kids think about protecting the planet while they watched giant robots fight. The toy line problem. So the show was great, the concept was solid, the creative team was legendary. Everything should have worked, right? Well, here's where it all started to fall apart. The toys. Kenner, the company behind the original Star Wars action figures, they were looking for the next big thing, as the Star Wars trilogy was wrapping up. And they went all in on the Centurions. But they made some decisions that, in hindsight, were absolute business disasters. First, the figures were 10 inches tall. Now, that might not sound like a big deal, but the industry standard was 3.75 inches for Star Wars or 5.5 inches for other lines. These were massive, and because they were so big, they were expensive. Way more expensive than a G.I. Joe or a Transformer. Second, the whole gimmick was this hole and peg system. The figures had multiple 5mm holes all over their bodies, chest, back, arms, legs, so you could plug in different weapon systems. It was like a wardrobe model, similar to Barbie. You were supposed to buy the base figure and then continuously purchase separate weapon systems to expand the play experience. Here's the problem. For a parent in the mid-80s, this was a nightmare. Buying all three main heroes and their basic weapon systems was a major financial investment, and kids wanted all of it. But most parents looked at the price tag and just bought their kid a Transformer instead, something that was self-contained and didn't require buying a dozen accessories. The business model was fundamentally flawed. It was too expensive for the market they were targeting. And here's the thing. The engineering was actually too good. These toys were incredibly well made, with complex mechanisms and tons of accessories. But all that quality came at a price point that parents just weren't willing to pay, especially when they'd have to keep buying more and more pieces. It's like Kenner built a Cadillac when the market wanted a Chevy. The corporate death sentence. Now, the show actually did pretty well initially. They started with a 5-part miniseries in early 1986, and it tested well enough that Ruby Spears commissioned a full 60-episode second season. That's a massive production commitment, bringing the total to 65 episodes. And they tried to expand the cast too. They introduced 2 new Centurions, Rex Charger, an energy programming expert in a red and pale green suit, and John Thunder, a Native American infiltration specialist in a sleek black suit. These characters were added to increase diversity and give new marketing hooks. They were introduced in the Man or Machine 5-part arc. And you know what? Fans loved them. They became regular characters in the later episodes, which a lot of people consider the best in the series. The writing got more sophisticated, the stakes got higher, and these new characters brought fresh dynamics to the team. But here's the tragedy. Their action figures were never mass-produced. By the time these characters were introduced, the toy line was already dying. Kenner had already started pulling back. The molds were completed, The figures were designed and ready to go, but they never hit store shelves. There was also supposed to be a cybervore line, robotic animals like a panther and a shark that appeared in the show. Designed, but never released. The Straffer, a flying missile platform drone, got a mass release. But the Traumatizer, one of Doc Terror's walking sentry robots with laser arms, was made as a Sears exclusive because the line was underperforming so badly that Kenner limited distribution. Today, that Sears exclusive Traumatizer is one of the rarest and most expensive pieces in the secondary market. We're talking hundreds of dollars for a toy that barely anyone bought in 1987. And if you can find a mint in-box orbital interceptor or tidal blast, easily over $500. The figures themselves are prone to paint rub and joint looseness, so pristine examples are like gold to collectors. So by 1987, the writing was on the wall. The toy boom of the early 80s was plateauing. The market was oversaturated with Transformers, G.I. Joe, Mask, Thundercats. Everyone was competing for the same slice of the pie. And the Centurions, with its high production costs and stagnant sales, was a prime candidate for termination. When Kenner was eventually sold to Tonka, and later to Hasbro, they started liquidating non-performing properties. And here's where it gets really dark. Hasbro reportedly ordered the physical destruction of the original steel molds used to manufacture the figures. We're talking about the molds for the entire line, including those never-released Rex Charger and John Thunder figures that were already completed. Now, collectors and toy historians still debate why they did this. Some think it was a tax write-off. Others believe it was a deliberate move to clear out failed properties to make room for Hasbro's core brands. But regardless of the reason, the result was the same. The physical means of production for one of the most unique toy lines of the 80s was permanently erased. You can't just recreate those complex 10-inch molds from scratch. It would cost a fortune. So even if someone wanted to do a retro reissue today, like they've done with Transformers or G.I. Joe, they literally can't. The molds are gone, destroyed. It's a scorched earth approach that still baffles collectors today. Why not just store them? Why not sell them to another company? Nope, they destroyed them. It's like they wanted to make absolutely sure the Centurions could never come back. But wait, it gets even weirder. So Warner Brothers acquired the animation library in the early 90s when they bought Ruby Spears. That means they own the actual cartoon episodes. But the rights to the Centurions brand itself, the intellectual property, that's a different story. According to industry insiders and toy historians, the Centurions is currently owned by a private individual or firm that has essentially locked the rights away and thrown away the key. And here's the kicker. This owner is rumored to be someone who is not particularly proud of the line, or is just completely uncooperative with licensing requests. Think about that for a second. We're living in an era where everything from the 80s is getting rebooted. Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, Thundercats, they've all had modern revivals. But the Centurions? Nothing. Radio silence. There's no public indication of when these rights might revert or become available. So the Centurions exists in this weird legal purgatory, where it's just a memory for those of us who grew up with it, with no path toward a modern reimagining. It's like the franchise is being held hostage by someone who doesn't even want it. And that's just maddening when you think about how perfect this property would be for a modern reboot. Think about it. Modular power suits, environmental themes, diverse team, cybernetic villains. This could be huge today, but it's locked away by someone who apparently wants nothing to do with it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so a toy line from the 80s failed. Why should I care? Here's why. The Centurions is a perfect case study in how you can do everything right, creatively, and still fail commercially. You had Jack Kirby and Gil Kane designing the characters. You had top-tier science fiction writers crafting the stories. You had Nippon Sunrise animating it with mecha-level quality. The show had environmental themes that were ahead of its time. It explored the ethics of cybernetics and human-machine integration, topics that are more relevant today than they were in 1986. But none of that mattered because the business model was broken. The toys were too expensive. The wardrobe approach required too much investment from parents. And when the line failed, The corporate response was to literally destroy any chance of it ever coming back. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of over-engineering a product for kids. Innovation is great, but it has to be balanced against the realities of parental budgets and market expectations. The Centurions was too ambitious for its own good. It was a premium product in a market that wanted affordable, self-contained toys. The Centurions was a future that arrived too early, was too expensive to maintain, and was eventually burned so that no one else could inherit its crown. And here's what really gets me. The show's themes about technology and humanity are more relevant now than ever. We're living in a world of AI, cybernetics, environmental crisis, all the stuff the Centurions was exploring in 1986. This franchise deserved better. And you know what? That makes me genuinely sad. Because if you go back and watch those episodes today, and they're out there if you know where to look, the show holds up. The animation is still impressive. The stories are still engaging. The themes of environmentalism and the ethical boundaries of technology are more relevant now than ever. There's a whole generation of us who remember these toys, who remember that feeling of snapping those weapon systems onto the figures, who remember the Power Xtreme battle cry, who remember begging our parents for just one more weapon pack at Toys R Us, and we're watching every other franchise from our childhood get rebooted, reimagined, and brought back for a new generation. But not the Centurions, because some private owner has the rights locked away, and the molds were destroyed decades ago. It's a phantom franchise. Everyone remembers it, but no one can touch it. And that's the real tragedy here. It's not just that the toy line failed. Toy lines fail all the time. It's that the failure was so complete, so thorough, that the franchise was essentially erased from existence. The molds destroyed, the rights locked away, the memory fading with each passing year. The Centurions deserved better. We deserved better. So that's the story of the Centurions. Power Xtreme. A show that had everything. Legendary creators, innovative concepts, top-tier animation, and still couldn't survive the harsh realities of retail economics and corporate restructuring. If you found this video interesting, you need to check out my video on Dungeons & Dragons, because that story is just as wild, and it involves some of the same players. I'll link it right here on the screen. And hey, if you grew up with the Centurions, drop a comment below. Did you have any of the toys? Do you remember watching the show? What was your favorite assault weapon system? Let's keep the memory of this franchise alive, because it deserves better than being locked away in some legal vault. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.